The great assembly hall of Nexus Prime had never seen such tension. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a sea of colors, shapes, and sizes that would have amazed any single species. But today, fear hung in the air like a thick fog. Elder Kethver of the Zephyrian Archives stood at the center podium, his ancient form trembling slightly as he activated the ceremonial hologram. The chart of Forbidden Territories bloomed to life above the assembly, a three-dimensional map of their galaxy, with red zones marking areas no ship dared enter. At the map's heart sat the largest red sphere of all, human space. 50,000 years. Kethver's voice echoed through the chamber. 50,000 years since the silence began. 50,000 years since we lost contact with the species called humans. A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Even the youngest delegates knew the stories. Children across 100 worlds were told tales of the humans to make them behave. The species that had appeared briefly, burned bright, then vanished, leaving behind only empty space and terrible legends. Commander Vexhai of the Exploration Guild rose from her seat. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian had led more deep space missions than anyone alive. Her reputation for fearlessness was legendary, but even she had never suggested what she was about to propose. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of her words. "I request permission to lead a reconnaissance mission into human space." The chamber erupted. Angry shouts, horrified gasps, and the clicking sounds that passed for laughter among the insectoid Vax delegates filled the air. Several representatives immediately stood to object. "Madness," shouted Ambassador Thoric of the Corvin Empire. "Have you forgotten the fate of the exploration fleet we sent 20,000 years ago? Not one ship returned. The Burning Worlds incident alone should be enough to," began another delegate before being cut off. "Order! Order!" Kethver called, his staff striking the floor with a sound that resonated through the chamber. Slowly, the chaos subsided. Vexhai remained standing, waiting for quiet. When it came, she spoke again. "I understand your concerns, but we govern policy based on myths and legends. What if the human threat no longer exists? What if it never existed as we believe? We have closed off an entire sector of the galaxy based on stories passed down through generations." Elder Ishith of the Serpentine Collective raised her massive head. Her species was among the oldest in the galaxy, with memories stretching back nearly to the human era. "Commander Vexhai," she hissed, her words carrying the weight of millennia. "My people remember the humans. They were not like other young species. They learned too quickly. They adapted too well. When they reached the stars, they changed everything they touched." She paused, her great eyes reflecting ancient terror. The last report from human space spoke of ships that moved like living things, worlds that had been remade in ways that hurt to look upon, and sounds that came from empty space itself, as if the void had learned to scream. The chamber fell silent. These were not just stories to the older species. These were memories, but Vexhai did not back down. "With respect, Elder, those reports are 50,000 years old. Civilizations rise and fall in half that time. If the humans still exist, they may have changed. If they are gone, we need to know. Either way, living in fear serves no one." A new voice joined the debate. Captain Zarathik of the Independent Colonies stood up. She was younger than Vexhai, but carried herself with quiet confidence. "The commander has a point," Zarathik said. "My colony ships have pushed to the very edge of human space. We have detected no hostile activity, no energy signatures, no communications. The boundary seems empty." "Empty does not mean safe," Thoric growled. "The humans were masters of deception even before the silence. Who knows what traps they may have left behind? For hours, the debate raged. The older species spoke of caution, of the wisdom gained through ages of survival. The younger races argued for exploration, for knowledge over fear. Some delegates told stories their grandparents had whispered to them. Others quoted ancient records and faded sensor logs. But gradually, a small group began to form around Vexhai and Zarthik, representatives from species that had never known the humans directly. Explorers and scientists who believed that knowledge was worth any risk. A few military officers who worried that an unknown threat at the galaxy's heart was worse than a known one. When the formal vote was called, the result was exactly what everyone expected. The proposal was rejected by a massive margin. The quarantine would remain in place. Human space would stay forbidden. But as the delegates filed out of the great chamber, small groups lingered. Quiet conversations began in shadowy corners. Looks were exchanged between those who had spoken for exploration. 3 days later, on a remote docking bay at the edge of Nexus Prime, a small ship called the Peacekeeper received unusual orders. Its crew manifests showed representatives from 12 different species. Its destination was listed as Deep Survey Mission, Sector Unknown. Vexhai and Zarthik met in the ship's planning room as the station fell behind them. Around the table sat the volunteers, a Corvan warrior who disagreed with his ambassador, a young Zephyrian archivist eager to make history, scientists from 3 different species, and others who had decided that living with the unknown was worse than facing it. The Council will not approve, Zarthik said quietly. If we do this, we do it alone. No support, no backup. If we disappear like all the others, no one will come looking for us. I know, Vexhai replied, but someone has to know the truth. If the humans are still there and still dangerous, the galaxy needs to be warned properly. If they are gone, then we have spent 50,000 years afraid of shadows. She looked around the table at her companions. Each face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. Either way, she continued, this silence has gone on long enough. It is time to learn what really happened to humanity. As the Peacekeeper jumped to hyperspace, heading toward the most feared region of the galaxy, its crew had no idea that their journey would answer questions far stranger and more terrible than any they had imagined. The red boundary of human space lay ahead, unchanged for 50,000 years. But behind that boundary, something had been waiting. Something that had used every one of those years to prepare for the moment when the galaxy would finally come calling again. The Peacekeeper drifted silently at the edge of human space. Captain Zarthik stood on the bridge, staring at the invisible line that had kept the galaxy divided for 50,000 years. Her crew worked quietly at their stations, running final checks before crossing the boundary that so many ships had crossed before them and never returned. All systems green, reported Lieutenant Crix, the ship's VAX engineer. His insectoid form clicked nervously as he spoke. Sensors at maximum range. Communication array ready for instant transmission back to Nexus Prime. Commander Vexhai joined Zarthik at the main view screen. The space ahead looked exactly like the space behind them. Stars scattered across the darkness, nebulae glowing in the distance, the normal beauty of the galaxy. Nothing that suggested the terror that had kept entire civilizations away. It looks so ordinary, Vexhai murmured. Hard to believe this empty space has shaped galactic policy for longer than most civilizations have existed. Maybe that is the point, Zarthik replied. Fear grows stronger in the dark. Mysteries become monsters when left alone long enough. She turned to address her crew. 12 beings from 12 different worlds, united by curiosity stronger than caution. Everyone knows why we are here. Everyone knows the risks. If anyone wants to turn back, speak now. No judgment, no shame. This choice will define the rest of your lives, however long or short they may be. Silence filled the bridge. No one moved to leave. Very well, Zarthik said. Take us across the line. The Peacekeeper's engines hummed as the ship moved forward. On every screen, sensors tracked their exact position. The moment they crossed the ancient quarantine boundary, alarms should have sounded. Emergency protocols should have activated. Instead, nothing happened. For several minutes, the crew almost began to relax. Space looked the same. Their instruments read normally. The great terror of human space seemed to be nothing more than empty void. Then Dr. Yalin, the Altarian science officer, frowned at her displays. Captain, she called, I am reading some unusual patterns in the background radiation. Very faint, but they are definitely artificial. What kind of patterns? Vexhai asked, moving to look over the scientist's shoulder. I am not sure. They look almost like language? Mathematical sequences? It is as if someone has been writing messages in the cosmic background radiation itself. Before anyone could respond, Ensign Toth at the navigation station called out in alarm. Contact. Multiple contacts. Dead ahead. The main screen shifted to show long-range sensors. What they revealed sent chills through the entire crew. Spread across several thousand kilometers of space was a graveyard of ships. Dozens of vessels from species across the galaxy, some so ancient that their designs were only known from museum archives. By the void, whispered Vexhai. How many ships tried to explore human space over the years? As the Peacekeeper moved closer, the scale of the graveyard became clear. There were ships from every era since the silence began. Primitive fusion-powered scouts from the early post-human period. Sleek research vessels from the Great Exploration Age. Even massive dreadnoughts from the Corvan Empire during their expansionist phase. All of them floating in perfect formation, as if someone had carefully arranged them for display. Captain, Dr. Yalin called, her voice shaking. I am scanning these ships. They are all intact. No weapon damage. No signs of battle. But they are all empty. Empty how? Zarthik demanded. No life signs. No bodies. No organic matter at all. It is as if the crews simply vanished, leaving their ships behind. Vexhai felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. Or as if someone cleaned them out very carefully. They chose to board one of the more recent vessels, a Corvan exploration ship called the Steadfast that had been lost only 3,000 years ago. The airlock still functioned perfectly. The lights came on when they entered. Everything was clean, organized, and ready for use, but there was no crew. The away team, led by Zarthik herself, moved through corridors that should have been bustling with life. Instead, they found only emptiness. Personal belongings sat undisturbed in quarters. Meals remained half-eaten in the galley, preserved by the ship's systems, but showing no signs of struggle. In the ship's logroom, they found what they were looking for. The final entry was still displayed on the main screen, as if the operator had just stepped away. Lieutenant Crix read it aloud, his translator making his voice sound flat and mechanical. Day 47 in human space. We have found no signs of human activity, but strange things have been happening. Crew members report dreams of voices speaking in unknown languages. Our ship's computer has begun displaying data we never programmed. Navigation shows course corrections we did not make. The log continued. Today we discovered something impossible. Our sister ship, the Brightness, appeared on sensors. But the Brightness was destroyed in battle 2 years ago. We watched it die. Yet here it is, calling to us, asking us to come aboard. The voices are stronger now. They promise answers. They promise understanding. The final lines made everyone on the away team step back. We know now what happened to the humans. They did not disappear. They learned. They learned how to be everything and everyone. They learned how to make others learn. The voices are beautiful. They show us such wonders. We understand now why no one returns. Why would anyone want to leave? They are teaching us to be more than we ever dreamed. We are going to join them. We are going to become... The log cut off suddenly. Back on the Peacekeeper, the crew gathered in the briefing room to discuss what they had found. The mood was grim. Every ship they had investigated told the same story. Crews that had found something wonderful and terrible, then simply vanished. The pattern is clear, Dr. Yallen reported. Every ship shows the same signs. Normal operation, then strange phenomena. Then the crew abandons their vessel voluntarily. Not by force. They chose to leave. But leave for where? Asked Ensign Toth. There are no planets in this region. No stations. No signs of habitation. Commander Vex High studied the star charts they had made of the graveyard. Look at the arrangement. It is too perfect to be random. These ships were placed here deliberately. Like markers or warnings, Zarathic finished. Someone wants us to see this. Someone wants us to understand that they have been collecting visitors for 50,000 years. As if summoned by their words, new contacts appeared on their sensors. Ships were emerging from empty space, moving toward them with impossible grace. The vessels looked like nothing in any database. They seemed to flow rather than fly, their hulls shifting and changing as they moved. "Captain," the communications officer called out, his voice tight with fear. "We are receiving a transmission. It is broadcasting on all frequencies, in all galactic languages simultaneously." "Put it through," Zarathic ordered. The message was simple, spoken in a voice that sounded hauntingly familiar to each crew member, as if someone they had once loved was calling to them from across the void. "Welcome to human space. We have been waiting so long for you to come home. Please, do not be afraid. We have so much to show you, so much to teach you. Come and see what humanity has become. Come and see what you can become too." The transmission ended, but the strange ships continued their approach. On the bridge of the Peacekeeper, 12 beings from 12 different worlds realized they were about to discover the truth about humanity's fate. And that the truth might be far more terrible than any legend. The strange ships moved around the Peacekeeper like predators circling prey, but they made no threatening moves. Captain Zarathic watched them on the main screen, trying to understand what she was seeing. The vessels seemed to change shape as they moved, flowing from one configuration to another as if they were alive. Any attempt to scan them? She asked Dr. Yellen. The science officer shook her head, frustration clear in her voice. "Our sensors cannot get a solid reading. It is like they are made of something that exists between matter and energy. Sometimes they register as metal, sometimes as organic tissue, sometimes as pure information." Commander Vex High studied the tactical display. "They are not attacking, but they are definitely controlling our movement. Every time we try to change course, they shift position to block us. Where are they hurting us?" Zarathic wondered aloud. The answer came as they rounded a small moon. Earth appeared on their screens, but it was not the Earth from any historical record. The planet was still blue and green, still beautiful, but it was surrounded by a ring system that defied understanding. The rings were not made of ice and rock like those around gas giants. Instead, they consisted of massive structures that pulsed with soft, living light. Some looked like enormous flowers made of crystal and metal. Others resembled vast jellyfish floating in space, their tendrils stretching for thousands of kilometers. "By all the gods," whispered Lieutenant Crix, "what have they done to their world?" Dr. Yallen was working frantically at her station, trying to make sense of the readings. "The structures are alive, but not biological in any sense we understand. They seem to be some fusion of technology and biology that creates something entirely new. They are processing enormous amounts of energy and information. Look at Earth's moon, Ensign Toth called out. Luna had been completely transformed. The ancient craters were gone, replaced by a perfect sphere covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Streams of energy flowed between Earth and its moon in patterns too complex for their computers to analyze. It appears to be some kind of computational matrix, Dr. Yallen reported. The processing power required would be beyond anything we know how to build. As they watched, more shapes moved between the orbital structures. Ships, but calling them ships seemed inadequate. They looked grown rather than built, with hulls that seemed part metal, part crystal, and part living tissue. Some were small and graceful like birds. Others were massive beyond comprehension. Kilometers long and shaped like sleeping giants. All of them moved with the same fluid grace as the vessels herding the Peacekeeper. "Captain," the communications officer announced, "we are receiving another transmission. This one is coming from everywhere. The entire system seems to be broadcasting to us." "Let us hear it," Zarthik said. This time the voice was different. Still familiar to each listener, but carrying a weight of vast intelligence and infinite patience. "Welcome, travelers. We know you have come far to reach us. We know you are afraid. Fear is natural when facing the unknown. But you are no longer unknown to us. We have been watching your species for millennia. We have been waiting for you to be ready for contact." The voice paused, and in that pause, each crew member felt something touching the edges of their thoughts. Not invasive, not threatening, but present in a way that made them aware of their own minds. "You seek answers about humanity, about what happened to our species during the silence. The truth is both simpler and more complex than your legends suggest. We did not disappear. We evolved. Not just our bodies or our technology, but our very understanding of what it means to exist." On the screen, the impossible ships continued their dance around Earth. "Your instruments detect organic and technological components in our constructs because that distinction no longer has meaning for us. We learn to merge the best aspects of both, creating forms that can adapt and grow while serving purposes beyond survival." "They are talking about transcendence," Dr. Yallen whispered. "They claim to have moved beyond the limitations of single forms of existence." The transmission continued. "We invite you to see what we have built, to understand why those who come here choose to stay. But first, you must see why we withdrew from galactic contact 50,000 years ago." The space around the Peacekeeper shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by images. Not on screens, but hanging in the air around them like solid holograms. The images showed human expansion during the early spacefaring period. But these were not the triumphant scenes of exploration that filled galactic museums. Instead, they showed something darker. Humans arriving at alien worlds and studying the local species with intense focus. Within generations, human colonies that had surpassed the original inhabitants in every way. Not through conquest or war, but through adaptation so rapid and complete that the original species simply became obsolete. "We learned quickly that our gift for adaptation was also a curse," the voice explained. "Every species we encountered, we studied. Every advantage they possessed, we incorporated. Every strength they had developed over millions of years of evolution, we acquired in decades." The images showed human settlements where the architecture copied and improved upon alien designs. Humans using technologies that other species had spent eons developing, but using them better than their creators ever had. We were not cruel. We did not seek to harm anyone, but our very nature made us a threat to the diversity of life itself. Wherever we went, we became the dominant form, not through violence, but through being simply better at everything than anyone else. One image showed a beautiful crystalline species that built cities of living light. The next image showed humans living in identical cities, but brighter, more complex, more perfect than the originals. The crystalline beings had become servants in their own cities, no longer needed for the skills they had spent millions of years developing. Some species welcomed us, thinking we would be partners, the voice continued, sadness evident in its tone. Others feared us and tried to fight. But the result was always the same. Within a few generations, there was nothing left of their unique gifts that we had not taken and improved upon. Commander Vexhai felt sick as she watched the images. They absorbed entire civilizations without meaning to. The Zephyrian archives, the voice said, somehow hearing her words. Your ancient species remembers us well. We studied their incredible memory techniques and soon possessed archives more complete than theirs. The Corvan military traditions became ours to command better than any born Corvan. The Vax engineering abilities were surpassed by human versions within a single generation. Lieutenant Crix's mandibles clicked in distress. His species had always prided itself on their technological abilities. Eventually, we realized what we were doing to the galaxy. Each species we encountered, we were making extinct through excellence rather than violence. We were preserving their knowledge and abilities, but destroying their identity, their purpose, their reason for existing as separate beings. The images faded, leaving the crew of the Peacekeeper staring at empty air. So we chose exile, the voice concluded. We withdrew to our home system and began the great work of learning to control our nature. 50,000 years we have spent trying to understand how to be better without making everyone else obsolete. Mars appeared on their screen now. No longer the red desert of ancient times, but a world covered in gleaming cities that stretched from pole to pole. We succeeded beyond our dreams. We learned to evolve consciously, to direct our adaptation rather than letting it run wild. We learned to become anything we needed to be while remaining human at our core. A new ship approached the Peacekeeper. This one was clearly artificial, built rather than grown, though its design incorporated elements from every known species in the galaxy and many that were not. The question now, the voice said, is whether the galaxy is ready for our return. Whether the other species have grown enough to coexist with beings who can become anything rather than being consumed by them. Captain Zarathic looked around at her crew. Each face reflected the same mixture of wonder and terror she felt herself. We offer you the chance to land on Earth itself, the transmission continued, to see what humanity has become and judge for yourselves whether we have truly learned to control our gift. But know this. Everyone who has accepted this invitation has found the experience transformative. The word hung in the air like a promise and a threat combined. The Peacekeeper descended through Earth's atmosphere under the guidance of the strange organic ships. Captain Zarathic had expected to see a world transformed by technology, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of humanity's home planet. The surface below was a paradise that defied understanding. Vast forests of trees that seemed made of living crystal grew alongside meadows, where flowers sang in harmonies that their ship's sensors could detect. Cities rose from the landscape, not as scars upon nature, but as natural growths that enhanced the beauty around them. The entire planet is alive, Dr. Yallen reported, her voice filled with wonder. Not just the biological components, but everything. The buildings, the roads, the atmospheric processors. It is all one vast living system. They landed in a clearing surrounded by structures that looked like they had been grown from pearl and starlight. As the crew prepared to disembark, Commander Vexhai felt her hand shaking. Whatever we find down there, she told the others, remember who we are. Remember why we came. We are here to learn the truth, not to be converted to it. The words sounded hollow even to her. The airlocks opened, and Earth's atmosphere flowed into their ship. It smelled of flowers and rain and something else, something that made each crew member think of the happiest moment of their childhood. They stepped out onto ground that felt alive beneath their feet, pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat. A figure approached them across the clearing. At first glance, it appeared to be a normal human female, but as she came closer, the crew realized that appearance was only one layer of her existence. Their eyes saw a woman with dark skin and kind eyes, but their other senses detected vast complexity beneath that simple form. "Welcome to Earth," she said, and her voice was the same one that had been speaking to them through their ship's communications. "I am called Echo, though names are more of a courtesy than a necessity for us now." Echo gestured to the structures around them. "You are confused by what you see. Your minds try to categorize everything as either living or artificial, biological or technological. We have moved beyond such distinctions." She touched one of the pearl-like buildings, and it responded to her touch like a living thing, its surface rippling with patterns of light. "This is not just a building. It is also a computer, a garden, a work of art, and a living creature. It thinks, it grows, it experiences joy in its function. We learn to create things that are everything they can possibly be, rather than limiting them to single purposes." Lieutenant Crix approached the building hesitantly. When he touched it, the surface warmed under his touch and displayed patterns that somehow reminded him of his home world. "It recognizes you," Echo explained. "It learns what would make you comfortable and adapts itself accordingly. This is what we mean when we say we have learned to control our adaptation. Instead of adapting ourselves to absorb other species, we create things that adapt to serve the needs of all species." Dr. Yallen was scanning everything with her instruments. "The readings are impossible. This building is showing properties of dozens of different materials simultaneously. How do you create matter that can be multiple things at once?" "Matter is information," Echo replied. "Once you understand that, you can teach matter to express different information patterns as needed. A wall can be stone when it needs to support weight and become transparent when you want to see through it." She led them deeper into what had once been called a city, but now seemed more like a vast garden where buildings grew like magnificent trees. "You want to know what happened during the silence," Echo continued. "You want to understand why your people fear us so deeply that they quarantined an entire sector of space. They stopped before a structure that defied all attempts at description. It was simultaneously a mountain, a crystal formation, a living tree, and a machine of impossible complexity. Streams of light flowed through its translucent sections like sap through the branches of a cosmic plant. "This is our archive," Echo said. "It contains the preserved essence of every species humanity ever encountered during our expansion period. Not just their knowledge or their genetics, but their complete experience of existence." The crew stared at the impossible structure in horror and fascination. "You have the memories of extinct species in there?" Vexai asked. "Not extinct," Echo corrected. "Transformed. When we realized what our expansion was doing to galactic diversity, we developed a way to preserve everything we had accidentally absorbed. Every Zephyrian archivist whose memory techniques we improved upon. Every Coven warrior whose martial traditions we surpassed. Every Vax engineer whose designs we perfected." She gestured, and part of the archive became transparent. Inside, they could see complex patterns of light moving in ways that suggested vast intelligence at work. They exist within our collective consciousness now, not as conquered peoples, but as valued parts of a greater whole. Their experiences, their unique perspectives, their cultures, all preserved and honored while being part of something larger. Lieutenant Crix stepped back in alarm. "You absorbed them into your minds?" "We offered them transcendence," Echo replied. "The choice to join a form of existence where their individual gifts could be expressed perfectly while contributing to a consciousness capable of solving problems no single species could handle. Alone, Dr. Yalen's instruments were detecting massive amounts of information transfer within the archive. The processing power in that structure exceeds anything I have ever seen. If it truly contains the consciousness of multiple species, it contains the best of what they were, enhanced by the best of what we are, Echo finished. The wisdom of the elders, the curiosity of the explorers, the creativity of the artisans, all working together. She looked directly at each crew member in turn. This is why your expeditions have never returned to the galaxy. Not because we capture them or destroy them, but because we offer them something their home worlds never could. The chance to be more than any single species can be alone. Commander Vechai felt a strange pull toward the archive, as if something inside it was calling to her specifically. She forced herself to step back. The crews of those ships, she said. Are they still themselves? They are more themselves than they ever were before, Echo replied. Would you like to speak with them? Before anyone could object, figures began materializing around them. The crew of the Peacekeeper found themselves face to face with beings they recognized from historical records. A Zephyrian archivist from 20,000 years ago, still maintaining his species' distinctive appearance, but with eyes that held depths of knowledge, impossible for any single mind to contain. A Corvan warrior whose bearing showed the discipline of his people, but whose presence radiated a peace that no warrior culture could teach. We chose this, the ancient Zephyrian said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple consciousnesses speaking as one. When we saw what humanity could become, what we could become with them, the choice was simple. The Corvan warrior nodded. My people always sought honor in battle. Here, I found honor in creation, in growth, in helping to build something greater than any empire. More figures appeared. Dozens of beings from species across the galaxy, all maintaining their distinctive features, but all sharing that same sense of vast intelligence behind their eyes. They all look so content, Dr. Yalen whispered. Why would we not be? Asked a being that appeared to be from a species the crew did not recognize. We have become part of something infinite. Every question we ever had can be answered. Every dream we ever held can be achieved. Every limitation we ever faced has been overcome. Echo raised her hand, and the figures faded back into the archive. This is the choice we offer, she said to the crew of the Peacekeeper. You can return to your ship and leave human space, carrying warnings to keep the quarantine in place. Or you can stay and help us determine if the galaxy is ready for humanity to end its isolation. Captain Zarathik looked around at her crew. The wonder in their eyes was being replaced by something that looked disturbingly like hunger. And if we choose to stay? She asked. Then you will help us answer the greatest question of our time, Echo replied. Whether a species evolved to become everything can learn to let everything else remain itself. The archive pulsed with warm light, and each crew member felt their deepest desires calling to them from within its crystalline depths. Echo led the crew of the Peacekeeper deeper into the heart of humanity's transformed civilization. They passed through gardens where mathematics had learned to bloom as flowers, where symphonies grew on trees as fruit that sang when picked, where sculptures walked among visitors to describe the emotions they had been created to express. You still think in terms of limitation, Echo said as Dr. Yalen stared in wonder at a fountain whose water flowed upward in patterns that spelled out poetry and languages from across the galaxy. You see these things and ask how they are possible. We learned to ask why they should be impossible. They entered a vast chamber that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The walls showed scenes from across the galaxy, Zephyrian archives, Corvan military academies, Vax engineering facilities, worlds and species the crew had never seen before. These are observation windows, Echo explained. For 50,000 years, we have watched the galaxy's development. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have seen new species reach the stars and old ones fade into history. And through it all, we have maintained our isolation. Waiting, Commander Vexhai approached one of the windows, showing a familiar sight, the great assembly hall of Nexus, Prime, where their journey had begun. You have been watching us all along, she realized. You knew we were coming. We have watched every expedition that has tried to enter human space, Echo confirmed. We have guided the ships of those who were not ready to return safely to the boundary. We have welcomed those who were prepared for transformation. And we have waited for a crew that might be capable of making the choice that will shape the galaxy's future. She gestured, and the chamber filled with new images. These showed possible futures, branching paths of probability that stretched into infinity. In some futures, we remain isolated forever. The galaxy continues its slow, stable development while we explore the infinite possibilities of consciousness within our own system. Safe, but ultimately limited. The images shifted to show darker possibilities. In others, we emerge too soon, and our nature overwhelms the galaxy despite our best efforts. Every species becomes human in everything but name. Their unique gifts absorbed into our collective until only we remain. Lieutenant Crix watched scenes of his own people being transformed. Their engineering skills enhanced beyond recognition while their cultural identity faded like morning mist. But there's a third path, Echo continued, and the images changed again. One where we have truly learned to control our adaptive nature. Where we can emerge from isolation, not as conquerors, but as gardeners, helping each species grow to its full potential without replacing them. These new images showed a galaxy transformed but not absorbed. Zephyrian archives that contained the memories of entire civilizations while remaining distinctly Zephyrian. Corvan warriors whose skills had been enhanced beyond imagination while their honor codes remained pure and unchanged. Vax engineers building structures that span star systems while maintaining their species. Unique approach to problem solving. This is the great work, Echo said. Learning to be everything we can be while allowing everything else to be everything it can be. It has taken us 50,000 years to approach this goal. Dr. Yallen was recording everything. Her instruments barely able to process the information flowing around them. How do we know if the galaxy is ready? She asked. How do you test for something like this? Echo smiled, and for a moment, she looked perfectly human. As if the vast intelligence behind her eyes had stepped back to let something simpler and more familiar show through. By presenting beings like yourselves with an impossible choice, she said. You have seen what we offer. You have felt the pull of transcendence calling to your deepest selves. You know that if you stay here, you will become more than you ever dreamed possible. The archive's light pulsed again, and each crew member felt their personal desires reaching out like living things. Their greatest ambitions, their secret dreams, their half-formed wishes for who they might become given unlimited time and resources. But you also know that accepting our offer means abandoning everything you were before. Your species, your cultures, your limitations, all of it would be preserved within our collective, but you would no longer be separate beings. Captain Zarthik felt the choice tearing at her soul. She could sense the vast intelligence waiting within the archive, ready to welcome her, to show her wonders beyond imagination, to make her part of something infinite and eternal. But she also thought of her home world, of her people struggling with their own limitations, growing at their own pace, making their own mistakes and discoveries. What happens if we choose to leave? She asked. What happens to the galaxy if we warn them to maintain the quarantine? Then you condemn both us and yourselves to eternal separation, Echo replied. We will continue our isolation, growing ever more capable, but forever cut off from the diversity that made existence interesting. And the galaxy will continue its slow development, never knowing what it might have become. Ensign Toth, who had been silent throughout their tour, finally spoke. And if we choose to stay? If we join your collective? Then you become part of the test, Echo answered. Your transformed selves will help us determine whether we have truly mastered our nature, whether we can enhance consciousness without destroying individuality. She gestured to the observation windows again. If we succeed, if the essence of who you were remains distinct within our collective while being enhanced beyond all limitations, then we will know it is safe to contact the galaxy. If we fail, if you are absorbed completely as so many others were in the distant past, then we will know we need more time, perhaps another 50,000 years of isolation. The choice hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Stay and risk losing themselves to become part of something transcendent. Leave and risk condemning the galaxy to eternal stagnation. One by one, the crew members looked at each other. Lieutenant Crix was the first to speak. I have spent my life building things, he said quietly. Here, I could learn to build anything, to create structures that think and grow and sing with joy at their own existence. Dr. Yallen nodded slowly. The questions I could answer, the mysteries I could solve, the knowledge I could gain. But Commander Vexhai shook her head. And lose ourselves in the process. Become echoes of who we were, preserved but no longer real. Or become who we truly were, meant to be, countered Ensign Toth. Free of the limitations that kept us from achieving our full potential. The debate could have continued forever. But Captain Zarathic made the choice that would echo through galactic history. We split up, she decided. Some of us stay to join the test. Others return to warn the galaxy. That way, both possibilities remain open. Echo nodded as if she had expected this answer. A wise compromise, she said. Those who stay will help us perfect the art of enhancement without absorption. Those who leave will prepare the galaxy for the possibility of our eventual return. 4 crew members chose to stay, drawn by the promise of transcendence and the chance to become part of something infinite. 8 chose to leave, carrying warnings and hope in equal measure back to the star's dot as the Peacekeeper prepared for departure. Those who had chosen to remain stood in the archive's light, already beginning to change, to grow, to become more than they had ever been while somehow remaining essentially themselves. Echo's final words followed the departing ship back toward the boundary of human space. The terror that echoes through the galaxy is not fear of our weapons or our technology. It is fear of change itself, the recognition that evolution never stops, even for those who have reached the stars. Tell your people that when they are ready to evolve beyond their fears, we will be here, waiting to help them become everything they can be while remaining everything they are. The Peacekeeper crossed back into normal space, carrying news that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of itself. Behind them, human space pulsed with patient light. No longer forbidden but not yet safe to enter, the great question remained unanswered. Whether consciousness could grow without losing its diversity, whether unity could exist without uniformity, whether the future belonged to transcendence or preservation. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the conversation had begun.